So kind of what good looks like when you're presenting a PowerPoint presentation. The transitions are going to be clean, the slides will be short, and they'll have a concise, clear message so you can reinforce your presentation. So you just want to hit kind of the high points. You don't want to be reading off the PowerPoint presentation. You want to be able to speak naturally to the group and have the PowerPoint presentation support you. You should not be supporting the PowerPoint presentation. Use a clicker to drive the presentation. I'm using my phone currently. You can use a watch if you've got one set it up, or a clicker. But it's nice to be able to do that, to drive back and forth without breaking your concentration while you're doing it. Limit the number of slides to include only impactful information. You're only going to have so much time where you're going to have these people's attention, so make sure that it's impactful. You can put some additional slides in to kind of lighten the mood or as icebreakers, but you really want to limit it to stuff that's going to be impactful for your presentation. Because if you want them to write stuff down or pay attention, you want it to be the things that are actually important to you at that point. Use transition and reveals, kind of like I'm using on this one right here, to prevent people from reading ahead and losing track. That's a big problem that can happen if you just put all the information up at once. The natural tendency is for people to just start reading what's on the screen. You lose them at that point. So a key part of that, and I'll go back and kind of show you, is being able to, so you can dictate where people are at in the process. So you are getting to drive and pull everybody along with you by using those transitions. So this is what bad looks like. So creating slides with too much information. No matter how many times we hear that too much text in PowerPoint is bad, it seems like the message just isn't getting through. There are a few people on this planet that would admit to liking staring at text more than they like staring at pictures. Text takes time to read, it is boring to look at. But perhaps worst of all, when an audience is given text, they will, out of habit, attempt to read it. As they do so, you will be talking and they won't be listening because they're reading. So as a great example of that, I turn around, I'm reading way too much text. As the group, you're not listening to me, you're reading the same thing I just was. And what was the point of me being up there when I'm just reading it right to you? That brings me to my next point, reading directly off the slides. I always call this the why didn't you just send me this in an email approach. If you're just going to put up a slideshow for half an hour and read verbatim everything on there, you could have just sent that to me in an email and I could have read that. So that's a big part of it. Especially when you're not facing the audience. That's something a lot of people do when they're first learning, and they think that they're giving the information, but you're not expounding upon anything. At that point, you were just reading a sheet that you could have emailed somebody else. And then driving the presentation using a computer rather than a clicker. That's another mistake I see people make a lot when the clicker breaks or they just don't think to bring one. So in the middle of it, they have to run forward and click on a laptop and then run back, and it kind of breaks the flow of the presentation. So kind of wrap it up. So we kind of talked about when PowerPoints are the most effective means of communicating information, when it's not a great idea to use a PowerPoint, and then some of the time and technology restraints that PowerPoints present, how to prepare for a PowerPoint presentation, some of the do's and don'ts. I tried to demonstrate kind of what a good slide looked like with transitions and kind of expounding upon it, and then going to a bad one where there was way too much information and you just stand here and read it to the group. And then by not using transitions on that, the group also reads ahead for you. And then we kind of talked about some tips throughout for impactful presentations. Now I'm going to open it up to the floor for any kind of questions that you might have.
I do have a question. Are there times where you would add graphics or pictures to your PowerPoint presentation?
Absolutely. It really depends on the group and kind of the message that I'm looking to convey. This was kind of a short, high level, just this is what we're doing with PowerPoint. So I tried to keep it crisp and clean. If I was presenting to a larger group, say when I do an all-store meeting or when I do an engagement one, I will put company logos all over it. I will try and get a theme. So you try and get a theme that matches the meeting. So if it is an end of year meeting, putting the logos on there, putting it so you've got a consistent branded message throughout. especially on longer presentations, it helps people stay focused and stay engaged just because you're giving them something different visually to look at in between slides. So especially if there's a big section where you don't really have bullet points, you're more just up there talking and kind of riffing with the crowd, that would be a great time when you would put a graphic or something else up, just more of a placeholder than anything else. So absolutely.
One more. Let's say people ask you to pause or repeat things during your presentation so they can like take notes. How do you address that as the presenter?
If it's not disruptive to the group and you're not having to slow down a lot, it's totally fine on one of the smaller ones to let people. I always like to get out my cell phone and snap pictures of slides. Another thing you can offer, if it's a group, say at work, where you have access to everybody's email, or you have a distribution list, what I've always found was great and what I always really appreciate, because even as an observer, that I can actually fully pay more attention to the presentation, is emailing out the PowerPoint. You can always lock it and then send it out, but I always like it when the presenter tells me that up front, or makes that fairly clear throughout that, hey, they'll get our email address and they'll send out the presentation to you. It allows you to kind of relax and get more into the program and focus on what's going on rather than have to worry about furiously taking notes. I was at one 2 weeks ago, and that's kind of what happened. The guy that sat next to me was constantly a slide behind because he was so busy trying to write everything down that he was getting all of the information, but I don't know that he was truly getting the message because he wasn't able to be engaged with the group.
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Like I said, if you have any more questions, feel free to follow up and email the presentation out to you when we're done. Thank you.